and unpredictability, which lie sleeping at the heart of nature. Modern man, for all his developed powers and his imagined insulation in his cities, still lives at the mercy of those giant forces that created him and can equally decree his departure. And
he still lives and is at the mercy of those forces, and yet there's always the loophole in Eiseley. There's always what we've previously referred to as the crack in the absolute. And not everything is predictable. That's the hopeful thing. He loves chaos. That's the hopeful thing. He loves the unexpected. That's the idea of this book, the unexpected universe. It's not the world of Newtonian physics. It's more like the world of quantum physics, where you have, in the old Newtonian physics, everything is organized, everything is predictable, everything is on schedule. In other words, like my mother used to say to me, a place for everything and everything in its place. That's the old Newtonian physics. But the new quantum physics is a place for everything and nothing in its place.
Yeah, we don't know where it is.
It's quite different. And the metaphor is the metaphor of the atom, the ultimate foundation stone of the universe, which consists of this nucleus around which these whirling electrons are going at a predictable rate of speed, except that every so often you have this crazy electron that can't be anticipated, and that's the nature of ultimate reality right there in that foundation stone of the universe. So always in Eiseley, we're dealing, yes, it is true, we're dealing with this undertow of the violence and the nature red in tooth and claw, but we're always dealing with the unpredictable element, with the surprising element. And tell us the story of the star thrower. You know, there's a good example, I think, of the surprise and the element of transcendence. And that's why, even though he would turn over his grave, it's like Yogi Berra said, if he were alive now, he'd be turning over in his grave. I mean, he'd be turning over his grave if he thought somebody called him a theologian. But every so often, it comes through, and especially, I think, in this metaphor of the star thrower.
Yeah, he's walking along the sea's edge, as he has a wont to do, as a solitary man. You can imagine Eiseley's personality as being one where he's comfortable being alone. And he's wandering along the seashore, and he sees another gentleman. And he's wondering, what is this gentleman doing from afar? And as he gets closer, he notices on the ground that the tide is probably going out at that time, and left on the beaches are these stars on the ground, starfish, and they're gasping for life, and being in the air, that is not a good environment for them. They extract the oxygen from the seawater. And I think I'll let you.
Well, so he sees that these starfish are stranded there on the beach, and they will die. The crabs will get them for sure. The crab invaders at night. And so his vocation is to pick up these stars, these starfish, these stranded starfish, and then sail them as far as he can, back out into the water, back out into their natural habitat. And there we have a metaphor for the universe. The ultimate reality of the universe has a tendency to pick up stars that are stranded and sail them back and give them a new chance. Sail them back and reinforce their right to live. That's the instinct that breaks through by surprise. When it does seem hopeless, I mean, from the standpoint of the starfish, he's stranded up there on the beach and without a chance of survival. So that's one of the metaphors of hope that Eiseley gives us.
Yeah, in an otherwise fairly pessimistic outlook for the species, on this planet. He says.
And then what about the spider, you know? He's got something in here about a spider who transcends his own web.
I guess what I recall about the spider incident is we think of ourselves as being all-knowing and wise of the universe around us. And he said, is our consciousness somehow limited into what we can know? And then he says, consider the spider and its web. And in one of these incidents, he takes his pen out and taps on the edge of the web. And the spider thinks, oh, dinner's coming, something wonderful. And he keeps tapping on the web, and the spider comes out and says, that's not the feel of something that is familiar to me. My universe only allows for moths and other flying creatures to run into my net, the butterfly net of my senses, you might say. And Eiseley stands there and pokes and realizes the spider has no cognition of who Loren Eiseley is. What are humans? What is this other universe that is tapping on his? And the spider can no more understand what Eiseley is, as Eiseley then steps back and says, we think of ourselves as all being so powerful and so wise and so smart and clever, and yet are we not like the spider, perhaps, and that there is another infinity of universes out there that we have no more comprehension about, or could have no comprehension about.
And remember his narrative about falling on the sidewalk and cutting himself and bruising himself so that his blood is out there on the sidewalk. And instead of thinking about, oh, I've got to get a bandage on this, he
feels sadness.
Yeah, he's what do you call them? Phagocytes?
Phagocytes.
He's thinking about all those phagocytes. They're part of me.
And they're dependent upon me.
Yeah, they're dependent on me. They're don't go. Come on, hang on. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't trying to get rid of you. Please, be reasonable. And then you're left with the analogy. Look, maybe we are the phagocytes. We are the white blood cells. And there's a super being of which we are only a microscopic part. And if that's so, what does it mean about our destiny, our nature and destiny? Always there is this element of the transcendent.
Current, yeah.
Of the transcendent. So we come back to the idea of Eiseley as a naturalist. And I think it's especially appropriate now that we're talking about global warming. We're talking about the hole in the ozone. And we're talking about the future of the planet. What Eiseley has to say is that this home of ours is our teacher. And that we had better turn around, and here's where you get the hopelessness of Eiseley. You wonder if there is a chance that collectively we can turn around and make the decisions that will result in the salvation of the planet. How do you answer that, Bing?
I think that's a fitting analogy. Are we to take the resources that we have here? He describes man in the introduction to the Invisible Pyramid as the slime-mold organism, and he starts off by saying, "Man would not be man if his dreams did not exceed his grasp." If I term mankind a slime-mold organism, it is because his present condition suggests it. If I remember the sunflower forest, it is because from its hidden reaches man first arose, and in moments of sanity, he must still seek refuge there. And so he is issuing a warning as we look at modern man in the latter part of the 20th century to not forget that he is a product of nature, but that his brain is the first great device that prevents or has taken man out of the inevitable trap that has faced all species, that of specialization. The brain is the first evocation of a generalizing device that frees man from having to, now it is his brain that will clothe and unclothe him. It is his brain that will feed him and his millions. It is his brain that will direct his decision making. And yet he warns us that we harbor within this gray continent, this ghost continent, these lurking things from our past, and that we have, that we need to understand what it is that motivates us and drives us to come to understand this ghost continent in far greater detail, with a far greater persistence, or what we do with our brains now, driven by our limbic and R complexes, the murdering of the nuns in Liberia, or the thought processes that drive a person like Pol Pot in Cambodia, that we have with our brains developed this enormous technology, this ability to create, and yet on the other hand we also have, are we mature enough to use this power? And he asks this question over and over again. Are we mature enough as a species to use the power of fire, Prometheus? Are we yet graduated to the point where perhaps that we can look at ourselves as the shepherds of life on this planet, getting into your realm?
That's all right. So the question, it's still open. To be, it's Hamlet's question. To be or not to be. We look on the one side and see the sources from which we came, and we realize that the power that brought us to this place is also present, and we have the great potential. But on the other hand, we have the gift of freedom, and we can go either way. And we have to live with the responsibility for making our own decisions. I was thinking so often as I've read this book of Wordsworth and his lines composed above Tintern Abbey, where he said, "I have learned to look on nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth." Eiseley looks on nature, but not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oft times the still, sad music of humanity. That's the note that comes through in Eiseley, the still, sad music of humanity. It's not a waltz, it's not a march, it's the still, sad music of humanity, nor harsh, nor grating, yet of ample power to chasten and subdue. And then Wordsworth says, "I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things." Now, Eiseley keeps protesting, "Oh, I'm not a religious man at all." But you get this sense, this presence that disturbs you with the joy of elevated thoughts, this sense sublime of